Thank you so much to everyone for joining us today. My name is Callie Simon, and I'm the Adolescent Health Lead for Momentum Country and Global Leadership. And thanks for joining us for The Silent Burden, exploring the link between adolescent sexual and reproductive health and perinatal mental health in low and middle income countries. Before we get started, I have a few notes. First, the meeting will be recorded, and the recording and presentations will be made available to those who registered. The chat is closed for security purposes, but we would love for you to please submit your comments and ask questions via the question and answer box, which you should see on your screen. We look forward to answering as many questions as we can towards the end of the webinar. Our webinar today has been informed by a recent brief that Momentum Country and Global Leadership developed. The brief aimed to explore what the literature tells us about the intersections between adolescent perinatal mental health and adolescent sexual and reproductive health. In the brief, we lay out that the evidence suggests that some mental health conditions can increase the likelihood of unintended pregnancies among adolescents, and vice versa. Unintended pregnancies can increase the likelihood or the risk of adolescent perinatal mental health conditions. For example, studies suggest that adolescent moms are at a higher risk for perinatal depression compared with older moms. In our work on the brief, we found strong interest in the intersection between adolescent mental health and adolescent sexual and reproductive health among all of you who are joining today and many others. And we wanted to continue to explore those intersections and, most importantly, talk about how we can collectively take action to improve adolescent mental health and their sexual and reproductive health. And with this in mind, we've developed the webinar that you're joining today. I'm so thrilled to say that we have Dr. Manasi Kumar, who is an affiliate professor in the Department of Psychiatry at the University of Nairobi and a research scientist with the Institute of Excellence in Global Health Equity at New York University. Dr. Kumar is here to provide us with the background on these issues and describe some of the promising approaches for programming. Following Dr. Kumar's framing remarks, we'll have a roundtable discussion where we're thrilled to be able to hear from young people and other program designers and implementers about their experiences and recommendations for the way forward to improve adolescent sexual and reproductive health and perinatal mental health. With that, we'll jump in, and I'd like to pass it over to Dr. Kumar. Thank you for being here, Dr. Kumar, and we look forward to learning from you.
Thank you so much, Callie. I'm very delighted to be here, just waiting for my slides to appear. Thank you so much. Next slide, please. Let me jump into explaining the context of adolescent perinatal mental health a little bit from how I have learned about it. So young girls and women, and typically we are looking at ages 11 onwards up until 24 years of age. So young people following the WHO recommendation who are pregnant or experiencing motherhood due to familial socioeconomic stress, and given the context of the difficulties the world is facing, also humanitarian crisis, they present with common to severe mental disorders that adversely impact not only them, but also their babies. And what we know is that these disturbances can impact beyond the perinatal spectrum, so typically go beyond the 12 to 18 months postpartum period and kind of consolidate into other problems as well. The range of perinatal disturbances include depressive, anxiety, stress, trauma, but also less studied psychotic, schizoaffective, dissociative, and somatoform disorders. And there may also be other disturbances around sleep, fatigue, and related conditions if there is HIV or substance use history. 1 in 7 women develop these disturbances, but the rates are higher in LMICs, especially in younger adolescents, 10 to 14. These conditions impact young fathers too, young boys too, but prevalence and types of impact are highly understudied globally. Next slide, please. This is a figure that tells a little bit of the scoping of problems and needs that we've carried out as part of our work. So let's look about the pregnant adolescents that we worked with identified that they were really feeling marginalized because of poor social support around disclosure of pregnancy, lack of basic needs. Stigma was a serious problem also because there was denial of pregnancy by the boyfriend or family members. There was a lot of shame. There were psychological disturbances as a consequence of the pregnancy due to heavy emotions, but also this kind of stigma and poor support. Adolescent mothers also talked about disturbed relationships, forced marriage or IPV, or difficulties, settling into a new role. So managing motherhood became really hard, particularly if one had to balance education and motherhood, and there wasn't really an orientation and an awareness of what all is needed. Poor health and empowerment in general across the board made things hard and made decisions hard and access to services hard. Next slide, please. This is a slide. It's a busy slide, but it kind of gives an overview of the kind of ways in which mental health has to be assimilated into SRHR, and SRHR has to have components of mental health for perinatal adolescents. So I'm not going to talk about everything, but let me highlight a few things. For example, we do not have services around counseling and treatment of irregular or painful menstruation, screening for anemia. Post-abortion care is very poorly understood and developed. Support for low birth weight babies and stillbirths, which are very common in adolescents. Sexual and gender-based violence counseling and referrals and kind of blending in trauma-focused interventions around this. Then other reproductive health services, particularly around prenatal counseling, HPV screening and vaccination, HIV services, are well developed, but within that, mental health is not always well assimilated in the PMTCT. Voluntary medical male circumcision, again, is not offered and understood across the board. I want to also reflect on why it's important to have mental health promotion and prevention focusing on personal hygiene and sanitation, both for the mother, the father, but also for the baby. Life skills, values clarification, goal setting, communication skills, decision-making skills, financial literacy are really important, as well as counseling on drugs and substance use, including alcohol, tobacco use, and abuse, are also very pertinent. Stress management is also an area that needs to be built alongside the service setup. Next slide, please. I want to give you an overview of a program that we developed in partnership with UNICEF and Ministry of Health and Nairobi County in Kenya. And my colleague, Dr. Joanna Lai, is here. My collaborators, Georgina, Fidelis, and Kevin are here in that process. So they'll tell you a little bit more about what are the challenges that we try to tackle in HAT and some solutions. So helping pregnant and parenting adolescents thrive in Kenya was a spin-off of the WHO UNICEF partnership called Helping Adolescents Thrive. What we tried to do was to accommodate a process, kind of a local contextual process. We started with a youth group, Kevin and Fidelis and Georgina led, and several of my team members are here, a theory of change process. The theory of change process, I'll show you in a little bit, was this idea that let us agree on things that we have to work on collectively and identify stakeholders that matter. Onto that, we added design thinking once we identified a few areas where we could intervene in the short run. Of course, theory of change provides a long-term kind of a objective that can also be aspirational. It's not something we are able to achieve immediately, but design thinking helps to come up with solutions. All of this was through an adolescent-driven process. So co-creating with them, identifying priorities and challenges, and then building momentum towards investment in adolescent mental health promotion. And all of these solutions that we talked about were embedded within the health system, within the formal institutional systems around learning and health and other kind of social services that exist in Kenya for pregnant and parenting adolescents, and sometimes generally for adolescents as such. So the idea was that we want mentally and physically healthy pregnant and parenting adolescents. We want stigma-free adolescent-friendly services. We want family community involvement and participation to make it everybody's job to address these issues, to make mental health everybody's business in some ways. And then we also want policy, formal service, and government action and involvement in shaping lives of young people who start motherhood and parenthood a little earlier. Let me request for the slide change, please. So this is a busy slide, extremely busy slide, but to give you a sense of what a theory of change type process might look like. It is typically a series of workshops with relevant stakeholders. For us, our most critical stakeholders were young adolescents, caregivers, and a team of very committed practitioners of mental health, adolescent sexual and reproductive health, who got together and arrived at a set of challenges. And the challenges were multi-level. We wanted to understand what it means for the woman, the adolescent, what it means for the child, what it means for the young father or the other family members. We know that young fathers don't always stick around, and so other family members take over and they play an important role, community members and the government. And we came up with a set of recommended interventions, and some were suggested interventions, those that are not currently in circulation, or those haven't been thought about in details but need to be incorporated. So caregiver and family support was one area where we arrived at, through the theory of change, that family members need to be helped in order to help the adolescent. Another area that UNICEF has talked a lot about with other agencies, Ministry of Health as well, that we need to empower healthcare workers so that the stigma doesn't come from their end. So you'll see a list of recommended interventions. And then we come up with a pathway that, if we arrive at some sort of outcomes based off this challenges and interventions, what kind of outcomes would kind of make sense to arrive at that impact, which in our case was that we wanted, a life of opportunities, a life that was stigma-free, and where there was a very strong participation of young people, young parents in shaping their families' lives and the future of Kenya. So that's the process that we recommend that those of you who are doing work should take on. And maybe one thing that I want to mention, that we arrived at one solution that we thought would work for us, which is, you could call it a solution, you could call it innovation, the idea of Cafe Tabasamu. This idea that within a health service context, within a primary care setting, we will have young parents and caregivers develop this cafe. The cafe is a social innovation where you could do some business, but you're also there to support other young people, to promote mental health. And my colleagues here will talk a little bit about what it has meant for our team. So we are still in a learning phase. We are developing these things further, but we think that this is a very important way in which livelihood support, some financial literacy can be combined with mental health promotion within the broad context of sexual and reproductive health and rights. Next slide, please. So you'll hear more about this from my colleagues, but the idea is that Cafe Tabasamu is a framework where you begin by knowing oneself better. You learn about self-care, resilience. We are not talking about very detailed interventions. We are talking about mental health promotion. So self-care is important. Resilience building strategies are important. What we are also saying is that knowing our surroundings better is also important. So many of us do interpersonal psychotherapy or relationship-focused psychotherapy. And one thing we've learned is that social connection is really important. Social support is important. And we want to strengthen that in our approach and framework. And we want to point to pathways to grow, care, build a future, so life skills, but also livelihood solutions. And we are not, as practitioners, trained in livelihood solutions. So those are things we are kind of finding out and learning more about from other stakeholders. Finally, the idea is that knowing and planning one's emotional well-being will help build a stronger life. So wellness planning for oneself, wellness planning for the baby is perhaps the way to go when resources are limited and opportunities are limited. You strengthen, you bolster your social support, you strengthen yourself in some ways. Those are the tools we are going to impart our young people and caregivers with. Next slide, please. This is a paper that I have written in collaboration with many of my colleagues. I think the reason I thought this was really important finding that we arrived at is that it reviews peripartum adolescents' mental health needs by looking at the kind of domains that psychosocial interventions have talked about. And we've covered the period of 2013 to 2021. And I'm sure many new studies have come since then. But the idea is was to look at what psychosocial interventions are, what interventions are being offered in this domain. So we know that pregnant and parenting adolescents have complex, multi-layered needs that need careful consideration when designing mental health interventions and planning the sort of interventions that are available in sub-Saharan area. One thing that we found lacking was that it was really important to speak to the broad and interconnected social health, educational, and cultural determinants or drivers. And it was really pertinent that each of these drivers or selected drivers be point of reference when risk factors are being targeted. And that was somewhat amiss in the literature that we saw, that the problems that we are seeing are poverty and kind of stigma and social marginalizations, but interventions are not necessarily speaking to these problems. So this is a nudge to other researchers to look into this, but you will also see that in our initiative, we've tried to speak to some aspects, but it's a work in progress. Next slide, please. I believe this is my last slide. So I want to thank you all for listening to me and want to hand it back to Carrie.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kumar. Thanks so much for providing wonderful framing remarks about the overall topics we're discussing today and providing us with a concrete example of interventions that you're working on and learning from. It's now my pleasure to introduce Dr. Joanna Lai, a health specialist in the Maternal, Newborn, and Adolescent Health Unit at UNICEF. Joanna will facilitate our roundtable discussion. Thanks so much, Joanna, and over to you.
Thank you so much, Callie. Thank you for having me. And also thank you to Manasi for your presentation and your extensive work in this area, which has really produced such practical insights for us on what some of the fundamental needs of pregnant adolescents and young parents are, and what kind of services, like you talked about, can make a difference on their mental health. So now we'd like to move into our panel discussion, where we'll go deeper into the discussion. And we're really, really glad to have a group that brings such diverse experience and expertise to the conversation. Joining Manasi as well in the panel will be Liesl Hermanus, who is the Clinical Service Coordinator for the Perinatal Mental Health Project in Cape Town, South Africa, which has been a long time advocating for mental health care services for all pregnant women and mothers. We're also happy to have Fidelis Wanjiku. Fidelis is an amazing 23-year-old mother, and she has a wonderful 4-year-old. She works in graphic design, digital marketing, and she's also a young leader and facilitator at the Tabamasu Cafe in Nairobi, which Manasi spoke about. We're also happy to have Kevin with us, who is an incredible 22-year-old father, and he has a lovely 2-year-old. Among his peers, he's known for having great mobilization and engagement skills. He's been really a key part of linking other young fathers to the community, from the community to health facilities as part of the Tabamasu Cafe as well. And then last but not least, we have Georgina, who is also part of the work Manasi talked about as a Tabamasu Cafe coordinator, and she's a dedicated youth advocate, an incredible champion who's been working around adolescent health, mental health, and SRHR. So a big thanks to all of the panelists for joining us today. And first, we'd like to hear, I think, from Liesl. We've heard a little bit from Dr. Kumar about some of the challenges facing young people when it comes to mental health and also sexual and reproductive health. Could you tell us a little bit more about the program that you're implementing and what you see through your work with young people as it relates to the intersection between perinatal mental health and SRHR.
Thanks, Joanna. So just to tell you a little bit more about our maternal support service that the Perinatal Mental Health Project. So we have a comprehensive, so we have a maternal support service which has been integrated into routine antenatal and postnatal care at a primary health care facility at a maternity unit in Cape Town in South Africa. And I think it's just important to give you some context into the community where our service is located. And so our maternal support service is based at Hanover Park Midwives Obstetrics Unit and in Cape Town. And Hanover Park exists as a result of apartheid and forced removals. And so if you were to Google Hanover Park, or if you were able to find yourself in the area, you would see the legacies of apartheid just in the infrastructure, in the prevalence of mental health conditions, in the prevalence of unemployment, violence that is happening, on so many different levels, more specifically gender-based violence, and then gangsterism, gang violence within the community as well. So this is a community that is living in constant trauma, and the clients and adolescents that we are seeing and the symptoms that they are presenting with in terms of mental health symptoms is as a result of the legacies of apartheid. And so I just thought it was important to foreground that, just so that we have some context. So to tell you more about our maternal support service, which is a comprehensive and collaborative stepped care model at Hanover Park Maternity Unit. And like I said, we have been able to integrate and implement our maternal support service into antenatal care. Also, what happens at our service site is this is where we develop and we test different components of the service just to improve access, efficiency, and then impact as well. And so part of this stepped care and collaborative model includes targeted screening. And so in previous years, we were doing universal screening, where we were offering screening to every adolescent or pregnant woman accessing services at the maternity unit. But now we have identified and recognized vulnerable or high-risk populations, including adolescents. And so what this means is that every adolescent coming for their very first antenatal or booking appointment would then be offered screening. And so we use a screening tool that has been developed and designed and validated by the Perinatal Mental Health Project, and which has also been implemented into the National Maternity Stationery. Once adolescents have been offered screening, they will then be offered what we call an EAT session, which stands for Engage, Assess, and Triage. And so what is happening within the EAT session is that the adolescents, a counselor is engaging with the adolescents. They are being assessed using a more in-depth assessment looking at risk factors, and then they are being triaged depending on the level of care that is required. And so we have what is called a minor intervention, where there is a low risk adolescents. And so this would really just be like psychoeducation around mental health, around breastfeeding, birth preparation, parenting, labor, and then clients requiring or needing moderate care or support would be referred to Tyler, who's one of our other counselors. And then those clients we've sort of classified, well, not classified, those clients who are needing a more high level or high intensity care would then be referred to myself. And so they would be offered a counseling referral. If the counseling is taken up, there is then counseling, there is case management, there is a postnatal follow-up, And then we also have a very stringent and rigorous monitoring and evaluation process in place. And then also we work very closely with the healthcare workers at this maternity unit, who I think have been able to see the benefit of this mental health care service at the maternity unit. And then besides working very closely with healthcare workers, there's also a lot of work that's happening outside of the facility and a lot of referrals to outside organizations within the community when we have adolescents who are requiring extra need or extra support, whether it's in the form of food security, parenting support. In the case of gender-based violence, we have organizations where we refer adolescents for, any support that's required around legal processes or court support. Okay, and then just thinking about when Dr. Manassi was presenting, there were quite a few risk factors that really resonated with me in terms of what we are seeing at our service site here in Hanover Park in Cape Town, more specifically around social support, and the fathers often denying the pregnancy, or we often have a lot of adolescents where they are abandoned by the father of the baby or their partners, or they are put out of the house by family members, or where they themselves have been parented or raised by an adolescent parent. And so we often find that there's this, when you have an adolescent or a pregnant adolescent, that is this increased risk of a rapid repeat pregnancy. And so we often see that. And then also stigma and shame, and how this influences how adolescents access mental health services and sexual and reproductive healthcare services. What I have seen at our facilities that there is, and other healthcare facilities within Cape Town, is that there is this movement towards more youth-friendly mental health care and sexual and reproductive services for adolescents, and accommodating school-going adolescents who are needing to access these services here at the maternity unit as well. And then also Dr. Manassi spoke about, adolescents struggling with balancing their schooling and their education as well as motherhood. And we often find that, or I have also found that quite often here at Hanover Park Maternity Unit with our maternal support service. So there was quite a bit that Dr. Manassi spoke about that really resonates with our service and what we are seeing. And I imagine with quite a few of the other participants as well.
Great. Thank you so much. That's really incredible and helpful for you to walk us through what step care, collaborative care looks like, and how that approach can really bring such a range of services. I can tell from what you said that what a young person would receive in terms of services within your site, but also the linkages to services outside. And so thank you for that, Lisa. I'd like to turn now maybe to Fidelis, if that's okay. Thank you so much for being here, Fidelis, and sharing your perspectives and experiences as a young mother. First, I'd just like to hear from you. What is something that you feel you enjoy the most about being a mother?
One thing that I enjoy the most being a mother, it's that one fact that my son gave me another title. It changed the title of myself from Fidelis Wanjiku to a mother to someone. Second thing, it gives me the energy and motivation to wake up and chase my dreams out there because I have someone depending on me. The third thing, it's because it gives me the energy, because energy is everything and everything is energy, to support my other young mothers out here at Tabasamu Cave, give them hope, motivate them through what I went through. I take them through the journey of parenting, because being a single mom is not easy. But if you have someone holding your hand, giving a shoulder to lean on or to cry on, or someone just giving you an ear to listen to, it's a whole different thing than being alone out there suffering. You have no one to talk to, no one can understand you. So whenever they come there, they always give me that feeling of being a mother is a whole different thing to me, because they have been a great support in my life. Because seeing them changing, to transforming and stopping this, when stop crying because of the journey that they have been, the rejection journey from the baby daddies. I also went through rejection when I was pregnant. Till today, I'm still a young mother, a single mom, supporting and raising my son all by myself is not easy. I go through a lot, but every day I normally tell myself, no matter the challenge, no matter the pain, no matter the sorrow, no matter the headache that I get, I still have hope, because my son is there looking up for my support, my help, because I have to pay the school fees, feed him, support him in all the ways I can, because he got me on. So being a mom, that's the thing that always keeps me happy the most.
Mhm. That's great. And I really like what you said about that you find being a mother and the energy in your son and the motivation and the hope, because you're right. You also mentioned there's a number of challenges, and that's an important way for you to work through some of those difficulties. You mentioned a number of things that were challenging. I wanted to see, is there something that you feel in particular is one of the most difficult things you feel you face in a day-to-day being single mother?
Oh, yes, one challenge it's because sometimes I tell myself I was not ready to have him, but because it was unplanned thing, but since it happened, there is nothing I can do other than to accept myself that I'm a young mom with my age, a single mother. I have to be there for him, and to tell myself that he's not a mistake in my life. He came to change my life, to change my mindset, my thinking, because I have to change myself from stop being a girl to a young mother, change my mindset, because he's there to to get transformation from me, to hold me back, to hold me and wait for my energy or my positiveness. Because if I have that negative mind, my son will grow up in a compound that he will feel like he is neglected or he is not accepted. And I don't want to never let that come on his mind, because no, she's just 4 years, but he normally asks so many questions that sometimes I'm not even able to answer him. Because I could ask myself, at the age of 4, how can he just ask me such a question? But if it's that difficult, it gives me stress. I'll just call Sheila or Joshina and ask them for help, and they will just guide me on how to do it. Yeah.
That's great. So you mentioned that's really important. I think having the mindset that can help you continue and do the things that you need is very important. And you also talked about, different kinds of support that really helped you through some of these difficulties. Is there anything you can say about the kind of support that you got the most, that you feel is important for other young mothers to have?
Yeah, like that one that always come on my mind was when I was going through a lot on my pregnancy journey. Because at that time I was facing a lot of rejection, depression. I used to isolate myself. I used to reject myself too, because I was at the age of around 17. 17. I was 17, but by the time I gave birth, I was already 18. So I used to reject myself, because I was asking myself, at this age, how could I be pregnant? What is this? I didn't understand what it is, or how can I manage? How will I cope up being a mom? My friend ran away from me. My mom used to talk negative things about me. The side of the baby, that was the worst part of my life. They used to give me nightmares, a lot of headaches. They used to say a lot of negative things that were paining my heart badly. But when I was going to my clinic, I came around Georgina, Vincent, and Marianne. They were doing their research about the young mothers and in mental health problem issues, and I got to talk to them, and that is how I got to meet Georgina, Vincent, and Mary. Until today, we are now, like, let me say, like business partners or what? Yes, because they taught me how to took me through the journey of pregnancy journey. I started accepting myself, changing my mindset. I started appreciating myself and changing the mindset that I used to have, that this baby is a burden to me. This baby will just bring shame. I started seeing the other way around, that he may not be a curse to my life or a burden to my life, but a blessing to my life. So the shoulder that they gave me to lean on, their ears that they could understand. Sometimes if we need them, you will just give a call and they will listen to you. They will give you, even if they won't give you that much support, but you see, they won't lack that one, two, three words that will help you move on or just guide you in the journey. And plus, seeing them in maybe once in a month or twice in a month, that was a whole different thing, taking us some places that, yani, it was amazing to me. It really, really changed everything. And my mindset, my thinking, I started accepting myself, my baby. I stopped rejecting everything and taking like, it is my life and it has happened.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Fidelis. That's, hearing it from the words that you say, it really helps, I think, us understand the importance, what you're saying, that young mothers have a place that they can go, someone they can turn to, but also someone that guides and helps them shape their mindset. That's really important. I like the way you put it. So thank you so much for everything that you shared. And we rarely get to hear much from young fathers. So a big thanks to Kevin for being here. We'd love to hear more from you. First question I have for you is maybe, what is something that you feel most proud about? Kevin has a 2-year-old, about being a father. What is something that you feel particularly proud about?
Okay, each and every time I enter in my house, so seeing her I feel so happy, because each and every time there is something in our home. So many guys, and those guys don't have those.
Yeah.
I can use Kiswahili, yes?
Yes.
And Georgina will translate, yeah?
Okay.
Yeah. So, kila time nikiingia kwa nyumba, ule mtoi nikimwangalia, na ile nya feeling tu, na ile nya na feel tu vizuri, because each and every time nikimuona na feel too happy, because unajua penye tu tumetoka ni mbali, and then huyu mtoi sasa vile alikuwa amegonjeka hiyo time yote, so sikuwa na time hata ya kukuwa na maboys nje. Those boys venye alikuwa amegonjeka, so sikuwa na maboys, hakuna mahali tulikuwa tunaenda kuna associate, so ni hivyo nilikuwa nasema
Okay.
mtoi ndio unipea tu furaha.
All right. So Kevin says that what makes him happy or proud for being a father is every time that he gets into the house and the little girl is there jumping on him. It makes him really happy, because then he also says that most fathers maybe do not get to have that kind of experience, and being young and just experiencing that kind of love from a small human being is amazing for him.
That's great. I like that so much, that how you put it. And of course, we also know, we heard, as we heard from Fidelis, there are ups, there's highs, and there's also lows. What are some of those lows or the difficulties that you find, that you face as a young father? in your journey?
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So maybe, yeah. So niseme challenges kubwa ni maybe kazi, and then huo mtoi sasa venye unaweza msupport sana inakuwa ni much worse. So sometimes hauna pesa, and then sasa kumsupport inakuwa ni ngumu. So then yeah, kwa vile alikuwa mgonjwa, so ilikuwa ni hard kwa mtoi sasa juu madawa kila kitu, but familia ilikam up na kina Georgina wakanisaidia. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's saying some of the challenges revolves really around livelihood, that most young fathers might not have a source of income, and they're here, he's raising, he has a young family, he has a young baby, and he has to provide. And also the fact that maybe all these big life change that you now have a child might also stop some opportunities to further your education, and now you have to stay home. So even if you have to look for a job, then you might not have the required qualifications for that. So providing for the family, and then also he also shared that one time when the child was sick, I did not have had enough information in terms of where do you go to, and I think for him it was a very serious case. The child was admitted at our referral hospital, and it's because that they did not, as a young couple, they did not have enough information in terms of how to take care of the baby, what signs do they look out for, and all that. So those are some of the challenges, so revolving around having a source of income, and also looking out for the health of their children.
That makes a lot of sense, I think. So having support with generating livelihood, income, or education, and then also having enough information to help help you take care of your baby is very important. Are there any other key ways that you think is important to support young fathers to better take care of themselves and also their partner and also their child?
Vitu gani zenye
So kama vile cafe imetuwekea hiyo nini ya kazi ya maji. So vile hiyo cafe imetuwekea hiyo kazi ya maji, each and every time kama mtu amekuja ametoka hapo kwa hiyo nini ya kuuza maji hapo kwa hiyo business yetu. So kama mtu ameshatoka hapo jioni, at least atakuwa na pesa ya kuingia nao kunyumba. So tuseme kama unaweza taka kubai, unaweza buy. Si kama vile unaingia kwa nyumba unaangalia do una anything. Yeah, so each and every time kama maboys wamesupportiwa hivyo, at least tutakuwa na something tunaweza fanya.
Okay. Kevin is giving an example of how Tabasamu Cafe has integrated livelihood into the mental health program that we do at Tabasamu Cafe. We have set up a small business for young fathers. It's a water business. Therefore, it already tries to bridge the gap of livelihood. So he's also saying that if programs of mental health or health programs are also able to train young fathers financial literacy on issues of growing small businesses, then it already will take away the stressor of them, or they will already have something to support their families. In case they even need medication, then they have some money for them to access medication. Yeah,
that's so important, helping us see that as part of a mental health support and mental health intervention, the role that livelihood, financial literacy, and support can play in addressing some of the stress that young fathers face. Thank you so much, Kevin, for sharing all of your perspectives. That's really useful for us. Maybe next, Georgina, thank you for being the translator, but we now also want to hear from you. As someone who really works closely with young mothers and young fathers, is there anything additional that you would say you see as some of the big challenges they face and some of the needs that they have for support?
Yes, and maybe just to tie to what Dr. Manasi had presented, with the interactions that we have so far been having with young mothers, young fathers, and even caregivers at the cafe, one of the things that we have identified that is really needed is the emotional support. most of these people, or the young mothers, the young fathers, one, they're not prepared for parenthood. So when they come to Tabasamu Cafe, or when they go to any healthcare facility, what they are looking for is a safe space for someone to provide for them reassurance. They just need that reassurance, and they need that safe space for them to be able to express themselves. And I think that is what one of the barrier that Tabasamu Cafe has come to bridge. And then also education and information. There's a huge knowledge gap. Especially as part of the research work, we realized the issues around knowledge on pregnancy, childbirth, infant care. This is knowledge that is missing amongst this target population. And it also gives them a lot of anxiety as they go through the journey of, pregnancy and, delivery and taking care of their children. They do not have all this information, then it will give them anxiety. The issue of social stigma, as Fidelis has shared, she lost friends because now the friends that she had, they no longer have peers. They start looking at her as, as a grown-up person because she has a child. But at that time, maybe she's 16 years or a young is just 15, they still want to be a child, but they are isolated. There's a lot of social stigma that goes around. Maybe they drop out of school, they cannot continue with their education, even though our education system allows for young girls to continue until they deliver. They can go home, deliver, and come back to school. But that stigma will still be there. So I think having support networks, such like support groups, like what we have tried to put together, is one way that bridges that gap. And then relationship challenges, especially in a family setup like Kevin's. It's a young couple who are sometimes even getting to know each other. A child is here. Maybe the source of livelihood is also not firm. So the added responsibility can cause a lot of conflict. So we have seen in the support group, these issues come up. And also the young people within our cafe are also looking for support in terms of understanding, communication, relationship counseling. So we have seen them come for relationship counseling, communication workshops, so that they're able to maintain healthy relationship. Finally, body image concerns. The concerns about body image is one really huge issue that we are seeing at the cafe, because now they become pregnant, the issues of low self-esteem comes in. So we need to have programs or integrate within our mental health or mental wellness programs. We need to somehow see ways in which we can integrate the issues of positive self-image. Thank you.
That's great, Georgina. So many good insights about, the need for emotional support as it relates to practically the relationships they have, and also the way that they see themselves, because physically that's a big aspect of change for a young girl going through pregnancy as well. My last question to you, and I know we have a lot of questions from the audience too, is you do so much work, and some of these challenges are quite overwhelming that young people come with. How do you feel you as a frontline worker can be better equipped and better empowered to support their mental health and practical needs?
I think capacity building for for someone like me who interfaces with this adolescents or this parenting adolescents on a day-to-day basis would be very helpful. And then also, even as they come to the health facility, I know somewhere Dr. Manasi had spoken about integrating mental health, at the clinics. The moment that this adolescent has come for antenatal, that already that screening happens at that point, and that support journey for their wellness begins at that time. So I also think that healthcare workers need to be supported. The other is that, of course, there's need for collaboration, and this varies. It's from having funding support, because everything that we are doing, at some point, we realize, even though Tabasamu Cafe might not be 100% funded at the moment, but we realize that sometimes there are certain things that we cannot that will need funding support. We have sometimes girls who have delivered, they cannot leave the hospitals, though we need to get them to have insurance cover, the government insurance cover. If we need to create awareness within the community to eliminate issues of social stigma for these girls and the young fathers or young families, we also need the kind of some level of funding support. And then I think collaboration also goes with our governments. And specifically, I would challenge the donors, governments to bring, whenever we are designing funding, or we are even designing interventions and programs for parenting adolescents, we need to bring them and have them at the driver's seat, not designing interventions or programs that will not work for them. So meaningful involvement means then having them being part of that decision making, that this kind of service would work for them. Mm-hmm. So they come and design what would work for them, for us, like nothing without for us without us. Definitely, that's what I meant.
Thank you. That's so important. Practically, the resources that are needed, the capacity building, and of course, the need to bring young people in when we are in all aspects of the programming. Thank you so much, Georgina, for your insights, but also the incredible work you do. And finally, with the panel, to close out the panel discussion, I wanted to bring Manasi back, if that's okay, and just hear from you, in light of everything that you've already presented and what the panelists have said, do you feel that there are, a couple of key priorities when it comes to research and also next steps and action that this community and the broader community should be taking when it comes to the integration between mental health and SRH for adolescents?
Yeah, thank you, Joanna, and your support and support of our team has been valuable in drawing some of these kind of life lessons in some ways. I think one thing that we learned, particularly with the kind of discussions we've had with Georgina, our team members here, Kevin and Fidelis, is that mental health interventions tend to be very diluted. They tend to be sometimes for adolescents in general, and sometimes, and particularly for perinatal populations, they tend to be very muted. Whereas in SRHR, we do have a range of conditions that and problems that where we appreciate the complexity of rights and needs and all of that interface. We need to amp up the kind of content we are developing so that it's relevant to their lives. So livelihood, for example, negotiating difficult relationships, stigma, shame, rejection, but also many more aspects for which we need to have a language, at least, to start a discussion. I think the second thing is the livelihood and financial literacy, and some empowerment-based approaches need to be better integrated. I wish funders would prioritize, even if these are simple strategies, some sort of microfinance initiative, some kind of social innovations. And I hope that in the future, people like us and Lysol will get more support in kind of strengthening these approaches. And the third thing that I saw Dr. Kihara from FIGO also talk about is the health worker piece. How can we connect health workers, lay, specialists, non-specialists, to be an integral part of these innovations so that they don't feel burdened. They are also supported. They are also enlightened. But they can help connect the dots. And I think in our work, we are trying to do that, pitch in different people, even if it is a guard at a facility, even if it's a receptive nurse or a chemist, bring them on board so that they can be part of a mental health friendly workforce. So I think those are some of the highlights, but my colleagues have said many more things. Thank you.
Thank you so much to all of the panelists. I don't want to let you go just quite yet, because we have maybe time for just one question, if that's okay.
Unfortunately, we're not going to have
No.
time for any
Oh, sorry.
questions today. Yeah, we've been answering them in the chat box, and hopefully
Perfect.
all of the attendees can see that, and we'll include emails for folks, and we'll go ahead and pass on to Corey. Thanks, Joanna. Go ahead.
Great. No, I'm just going to say thank you to everybody. And one note before we pass it on to Corey for the final words is that if there's anybody who's interested to contribute and continue to be part of a technical working group around this topic, you're welcome to join. The working group aims to collaborate, share information, and continue developing solutions and advocating for this area of work. We'll just put the email in the chat box. You can let us know if you're interested to join, and we'll get back to you. So now over to Corey. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Joanna. I appreciate it. So thank you to everybody who has joined today's webinar. My name is Corey Warnell. I'm a youth and reproductive health technical advisor with the U.S. Agency for International Development. I am in the Office of Population and Reproductive Health, but we work closely with the Office of Maternal, Child Health, and Nutrition, especially on the Momentum projects, of which we're here because of today. We're here with Momentum Country and Global Leadership. And so while my passion for adolescent mental health has helped to spark the conversation, I really want to extend my appreciation to Momentum Country and Global Leadership for running with the idea and doing the work that has brought us a very robust report and convening and today's webinar. This focus on the intersection of perinatal, mental, and sexual reproductive health is, in my mind, at the heart of what we hope to see come from our multi-office projects, an integrated, holistic approach to the well-being of those people who we serve. I won't take very long because I know we're wrapping up, but I just wanted to mention a few facts that might seem a little disparate until I can bring it together at the end. So point one, according to the World Health Organization, it's estimated that globally 1 in 7 10 to 19-year-olds will experience mental health conditions. Yet that remains largely unrecognized and untreated. While 14% of adolescents may meet the criteria for a diagnosed mental health disorder, the majority of adolescents experience mental health crises or even just trying times due to the normal cognitive and emotional development that happens during this time of life with the normal change in hormone levels. With this change in when this change in hormone level gets coupled with the normal change of hormone levels that pregnancy and being postpartum bring, it can make for a very vulnerable young person, which is why we wanted to talk about it today. We have seen, point two, that COVID has really elevated the conversation around mental health. It did exacerbate the need for mental health services, and it has opened the door for people to talk openly and honestly about their mental health challenges. So this conversation has finally really reached a peak that has been needed for quite a while. Point three, we have found through the Momentum report that that common perinatal mental disorders have significant and lasting implications for mothers' health and their quality of life, as well as has been associated with adverse developments in newborn and children. And we also learned that women in low and middle income countries are at greater risk for perinatal mental health disorders if exposed to negative experiences with the health system or delivery trauma, perinatal loss, poor social support. And we heard a lot about that today with the poor social support. So we want to make sure that we're talking about respectful maternal care, not for women, but for all mothers. And we also know that adolescents have some of the closest spaced births, which do have poor outcomes for maternal, newborn, and infant health. So we do want to keep all of these in mind, because if a young woman experiences a traumatic birth experience, she probably will not want to return for postpartum family planning. So USAID has been dedicated to assisting with the survival of mothers, newborns, infants, and children. But we want to make sure that we're not just focused on survival anymore, but really thriving. And that is where the mental health and psychosocial support pieces come in. We are making the changes within our own agency to help with that, to make sure that we're making those strides. And we hope that we are partnering with everybody as closely as possible to make those changes as relevant to people's lives as possible. I am happy to conclude our webinar with special thanks to all of our speakers and especially to all of the participants for joining today and for your support and your support and work with young people. There will be a recording and slides coming to everybody who has registered for the webinar, and so please keep an eye out for them. Thank you and have a great day or evening.